Oh, we're live. Hello there, cadre and chorus and all my relations. This is your Sensei Al Bob coming to you on our Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob channel on YouTube. I am your griot. And what is a griot? I tell you stories, that make you go, right? And don't believe a word I say, I am not preaching to the choir. This is not a cult. I'm not advertising or acquiring any action. That's up to you. All I'm doing is telling you a story, back in the day. And here I'm out in my friend's deep green. She lives in the valley, came to visit. I'm couch surfing. I'm on the bop. I'm going to get the last hurrahs of seeing my doctors. I'm in pretty good shape, but still have issues, And I'll be here as long as the universe wants me here, is pretty much it, right? And whoever watches this thing, again, I must have over 1,000 shows on Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob on YouTube, right? And they're all amazing. Everyone's different. The thing that makes it special is the fact that before I do this, I tune myself up shamanically. So I am a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist, right? So what is that? So I'm not, a witch doctor. What I look at is shamanically, meaning what is a shamanic frame, right? What is that? That is looking at things from the point of the artist in the first person, from the point of the Aboriginal, right? The first peoples, right? And back in the day, when Europeans showed up to indigenous lands like North America, Central America, South America, Africa, there were peoples there who, like the Persian Empire, they invented science, not the Europeans. Sorry, they understood. The Greeks got everything from the Persians. The Persians got everything from the Mesopotamians. The Mesopotamians got everything from before the fall of the Tower of Babel. Before the Tower of Babel, we all were one peoples, right? We were all human beings. We weren't, African or Anglos or Aryans or we were all one people, right? And we all had one God, and that one God was love's co-creation. And what happened with the Tower of Babel? Humanity was the Anunnaki's little science experiment. They took some hominins and played with its DNA, and bingo, they got a worker class. Digging up gold. They were like totally into gold and warring. Those were their two little hot tamales. And their gods were the demigods, meaning the lower gods, meaning there's only one God. And then underneath came a hierarchy, right? And before the fall of heaven, the hierarchy was love's co-creation, then Lucifer, and then everybody below, right? And everyone was like a clockwork, meaning they had no free will. They kind of, um, went along with the rules of, and Lucifer, was the head administrator, head bureaucrat. So what happens? Love's co-creation after infinite amount of time gets a little bored, wants something different, and this perfection that was administered by Lucifer, and Lucifer was just an administrator. He wasn't a god, not even a demigod. He was an administrator, right? He is as close to a businessman as you could get, right? But he wasn't in it for the cash. He wasn't a total sociopath yet because he was in love with the creator, right? And loves co creation. But instead of creating something new in every day and every way, taking the piece of the earth and making it stronger, he was just administering the hierarchy, right? And so when Love's co-creation created a an alternative, and that was a free-willed soul, right, who didn't have to follow the hierarchy, right? Could do whatever the heck it wanted to, didn't have to love God, pretty much Lucifer had to love God, right? He couldn't do anything but love God, right? He lived to love God, not love's co-creation. There's a subtle difference, right? God, G-O-D, when you take it into Sumerian, that means ball, which means Satan. So, you know, Lucifer had one of those imaginary mirrors. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the smartest, fairest, grooviest dude of them all? Me, right? Until it basically said, oh no, there's a new kid on the block. It's called a free will, way more groovier than you are. And hate. Where does hate come from? Hate comes from the fact that you cannot hate something unless you loved it at some other point, right? So here's Lucifer, who has loved and served God for eternity. And because what we're living in, our universe, this is an eternity, it's only been around 16 billion years, and that's nothing compared to eternity, right? So, that's where that came from. Um, and so what happened was Lucifer got very upset and really lost his shite, right? And boom, got so mad that the heaven broke, cracked, right? The hegemony broke, cracked. Uh, Everything was thrown asunder, right? And basically, there became a schism, right? A duality, love's co-creation, and this illusion of a material universe, right? That started with Lucifer's, childish explosion of of anger, not will. Will is a different thing. Anger, right? Which is a mutation from love, anger, hate, right? And so that's why Lucifer, Satan, the devil, whatever you want to call him, Beelzebub, was, you know, thrown asunder, thrown everybody. Meaning, if I can't have this, then frack it, I'm going to make sure everyone suffers, right? Now, it doesn't have to be that way. You can, we mud puppets here, we bags of water. This is just our frigging avatar. This ain't us. This ain't our soul. So that's the shamanic frame. All of that, the story of the indigenous folk, right? The human being, right? That not the businessman, not the European, not his story, but the human being, right? Told from the point of the artist in the first person, the individual, um, savage artist, right? And I had a great friend named Michael Savage, and his uncle was Man Ray, the French photographer artist, right? And in that period between the 1840s and 1910, there was a real gilded age of culture and art and science. And Man Ray was one of those guys. He's like, right between, he was like Franklin, artist, scientist, philosopher. And my buddy, uh, Michael Savage, we went to Paris and visited Man Ray before he died. And that was quite interesting. And the whole Man Ray, you know, museum and all his girlfriends. And it was quite, and that's, Mike was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to be. It's Michael, my Uncle Man Ray. It's kind of cool to have your uncle being Man Ray. Just like my second cousin was, you know, uh, John Steinbeck. I used to eat Thanksgiving dinner. Me, and and a few other notorieties. We sat at one of the kids' table. We didn't sit with the grown-ups because the grown-ups were talking about their cars and their new homes and their clothes. And we just bought a TV. This is in the 1950s, and you know, the guy who wrote No Man's an Island, he used to date my mom, and then he became a Catholic priest, um, Thomas Merton. So they would be at Christmas and Thanksgiving, along with my Aunt Gracie, who was like Auntie Mame. She was my mom's best friend, and they were really hot in the 30s. My mom, being the triple Capricorn, she ran Roosevelt's hospital. Now, her name wasn't on the door, but she ran it like with an iron fist, and she ran the medical school and the nursing school and the hospital, administrated it, underneath the rich guys who were putzes and didn't know what they're doing, but she made them look good. So that's why they gave her all the power to do it. And my mom was happy. And during the Depression, no one had money, not even rich people, but they had stuff. So my mom took her nurses, right, in the nursing school and farmed them out to the rich people to take care of grandma. Now, they couldn't pay them, but they owned real estate. So my mother lived in an apartment, I think in Queens, right off. He was the guy who initially bought, what's that place where they do the tennis thing in Queens? And it's a whole village, right? It's not just the tennis um, place, but it's this whole village has apartments and condos and stores and it's like a little village, right? It'll pop into my mind. So my mom had an apartment there that had like 8 bedrooms and fireplaces and a ballroom and servants' quarters, and she got it for free because she was sending her nurses to care of the rich people's granny and grandpa and stuff like that, right? Private service. So my mom, she had always something going, right? And so she was living like a queen. She was a queen. I mean, all the rich guys were like around her, like, "Oh, Wilma, oh, we love you." And so her mother's name was Steinbeck. Right? John Steinbeck was my second cousin. So, and Thomas Merton was one of those rich Protestant Methodist guys who was like, "Oh, Wilma, I want to marry you." And she goes, "Oh, Tommy, I can't do that. You're not even Catholic." So he loved my mom so much, he went to become a Catholic, and he fell in love with Jesus and became Thomas Merton, the great philosopher, right? So I used to sit, when I was 6, 7, I'd be sitting there with John Steinbeck and Thomas Merton and my Aunt Gracie and a few other interesting folk, and they would talk about everything, right? And when I was 6 and 56, that's when I first heard about how nothing is as it seems to be, because um, Thomas Merton was trying to marry Christianity, the love of Jesus, with the patience of Buddha, and so he was trying to, create, and then he was going to bring in Islam, because the first time I ever heard this out of someone's mouth, Thomas Merton told me when I was 6 that Muslims were Christians on steroids. Now, I'm sure a lot of Muslims wouldn't want to hear that, but it puts things in, especially if you read the Quran, especially if you read the Torah, the Old Testament. New Testament is like a comic book, right? It's written by yahoos who weren't even there, but they wrote it down, and the Holy Roman Empire paid them for it. Oh, we need to, it's just like MSNBC. All these generals who fought all these, who, were luminaries in, Desert Storm. Never heard of him before. Now he's a luminary, and now he's, a contributing editor for MSNBC, and Clapper and Bimbo and Yahoo, who are like heads of the CIA and the NSA. They now, they now are intelligence officers here at CNN. So it's CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CBS, and other things of that ilk. Totally state-run propaganda, because we live in a corporate state. You hear Kelsey Gam going on Senator Yahoo, where we just gave the corporations, and the really rich people a $20 trillion tax cut, and who's going to pay for that? Well, the poor people. We got to take some of those entitlements away from them, like Social Security, which most people, you know, if you have gotten Social Security, you paid for it. It's not an entitlement. Medicare, it's not an entitlement, right? And this, novel CV-19 is, the only countries that are going to come out on top of this are ones who have, a single payer healthcare. So you look at China. China's very well organized. It's an authoritarian thing. They locked down like 20 million people. Could you imagine trying to lock down just New York City? If it got everyone's really sick, and they're the most sick people, we can't let them out. Everyone on Manhattan, we blow the bridges up. Could you, just go back and watch the movie Gangs of New York to see what would happen. And that was the Civil War time. All the parks, right, in New York City have wrought iron fences that have these spikes. If you try and you fall on that, you die. And they did that on purpose because the Irish rebellion started in the parks. And so they put those wrought iron fences up to keep them in. Then they could only come out through the exits, and the military is waiting for them with their guns and their Gatling guns and their cannon, right? The U.S. Navy, who are all pretty much Protestants. If you watch the movie Gangs of New York, you will see that there's this Irish draft rebellion, meaning potato famine is coming, all the Irish are flooding over, and they do that on purpose because the North needs guys to throw in the battle, right? Because they're losing to the South, because they're much better military, and the North is pathetic, so the only thing they can do is mass produce weapons and bring all the Irish and give them a gun and send them to die, right? So the Irish get tired of this and said no, and the American army is so stupid, they give them a gun and ammunition, and then that's when the Irish say, screw it, we're not going. So there's a big rebellion, and they couldn't put it down, and luckily the North didn't have bridges. New York City, Manhattan only had ferries, so they stopped the ferries, so people couldn't get off the island, and but they were still killing and rioting and burning everything. And JP, the rich guys were like, "Oh, we got to stop these guys." And basically, again, the Protestant Methodist U.S. Northern Navy shells Manhattan, kills 250,000 people in one night. First industrial, Holocaust, because it killed everybody. Not just the Irish, but everybody else. The black folk and the rich, Dutch, you name it. Again, that movie, Gangs of New York, thumbs up on that one. Really, really, really talks about it. So we're at another one of these interesting little points because, it's wearing thin. So, first you look at you put everything on the frame of the indigenous, and then psycho, right? Psychology. How do you know someone's psychology, right? Not through Freud. Any of these ologies, if you just look at them as a textbook, you're losing the story, right? Because it wasn't just Freud. There were all these other great, all the way back to Plato and Socrates. They were talking about psychology, but they put it in the frame. They took it from the indigenous, man, not different. And so psychology, understand someone's psychology, you got to understand their social choices, right? What their job is, where they live, what their sexual preferences, what they like to eat, what they watch on TV, what they do for fun, right? So that's basically your social orientation, right? And what kind of lays the foundation for that is your cultural base, where grandma came from, what you celebrated, what holidays, what you ate, traditional food, right? And that's America. America, we are all mutts made from and it's not Velveeta cheese. It's not a melting pot. It's a salad bowl. All these separate flavors right on top of each other in the bowl of our culture. That's what makes America great, right? And when you have entities like the, plutocratic corporate state saying, no, 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 we can't celebrate anything except monetary exceptionalism. Me. Donald Trump is the perfect example of the corporate exceptionalism, meaning he's not exceptional. He's a failure and hasn't even learned. I make stupid moves all the time, but what are my three rules? Doctor, do no harm. Two, don't get involved unless I can have a positive exit strategy where I go in and take the innocent people out of harm's way. And three, I don't get involved unless I can learn something. And those three things are being broken down. Meaning, doctors is all doctors are doing. When I say doctors, I mean people who call themselves experts, authority. I have this piece of paper. I was talking to somebody last night, and I was talking about how if you want to be, you can be a master of anything. And that person lost his shite because no, you can only master one thing. You got to do everything just that, and then you got to get a degree in that shows you where a master at. I'm like looking at him. I said, no, you can. I said, look at farmers. They are master electricians, master carpenters, plumbers, mechanics, agrarians, chemists, weathermen. You know, they're masters at all those because they have to be, because they can't blame anybody else. They can't blame the expert, right? And a good example is this global warming thing. Oh, it's carbon. That little girl goes to the UN and goes, I shame you. It's all about you people with your carbon. Well, friggin', we are carbon-based creatures. Those trees up there, they love carbon. If you're scared of carbon, plant more trees. Don't cut down rainforests like in Brazil and in Asia, which were the lungs of this planet. They've gotten rid of them to plant palm oil so you can have chocolate bars, right? But the biggest thing causing global warming isn't the burning of fossil fuels. No. Now, burning fossil fuels is not a good thing because the real bad thing, you look at that coal-fired power plant and it's bellowing up black soot. Well, that's not carbon. Mostly mercury, mostly arsenic, mostly lead, mostly a ton of other, heavy metals that are poisonous and seep into the ground and destroy the water table, right? And the land itself, right? Out there in the deep green, Bayer and Monsanto turned a 400 square mile mountain range that had all these little valleys of farms that they were they grew more vegetables before California took over and Florida took over. That's who grew the vegetables. In the later 1800s, before freezer cars were there, and it kept. That was the bean capital of the world. That neck of the woods, and people like Del Monte and the frozen food guys had plants where in the 50s and 60s the workers there were making $12 an hour because that's how much money those companies were making having frozen foods. And all the they had no gigantic farms, they had all these little farms that brought their vegetables to Del Monte and the other frozen food companies, and they paid them really well for that. And so that does not exist. The only thing that they grow in these valleys, because Bayer basically did exactly what developers like Carrot Pinhead did. They had the banks redline neighborhoods, not lend them any money, so their economy dried up. They lost everything, and so they bought it on the nickel. And now in those farms, they've destroyed that unbelievable fertile land because all they grow is GMOs. GMO corn for cows, just for cows, not for human consumption. You couldn't eat that. They grow it and it dies before it comes to fruition, and then they chop. They don't pull off the corn. They chop everything into feed for the cows, and they got a lot of cows on the backsides of the hills, right, where they had goats. and now they have cows, and those cows don't eat the grass. They're all penned in, and they just constantly get fed this corn, right? That when you go there, when the corn cobs are coming out, you break them up and you break the corn in half. It's not yellow or white, it's red, like blood red. It's really disgusting, right? And the other thing they grow is tobacco and Christmas trees and soybeans. That's it. And it's turned the ground to death, right? And that's what the corporate structure is doing, and it's, they talk about, the welfare state. Well, the real welfare state it's a welfare state for corporations. Like, look at oil companies. They get this tax. They don't pay any taxes, right? You know what it costs Saudi Arabia to deliver 55 barrel of oil from their country to the refineries in Texas? $3, right? And right now, the oil price is going like this, right? And it's past 40. When it passed this $50, that was a little sign that we were going to have a economic disruption in '08. And the major things that were like woohoo, when I started going, okay, everything was based on one thing, and that was selling these derivatives for real estate, right? And the other things were the bond notes, right? And bonds are there so when the stock market goes down, people buy bonds because it's secure, right? But right now, the long term, which, if you gave them money to stick in the bank for, let's say, 10 years, they would give you 3%. If you put it in there for 6 months, they give you like, 0.75%. Well, it's reversed. Now the short term thing is sure, it's better than the long term thing because they have no faith in what's going to happen in the long term. Look, today, the stock market, the Dow dropped 1,500 points. I don't know what it's still got a couple more hours to go. At one point it had dropped 2,200 points, and that's because everyone knows. First off, the euro dollar is shite. Nothing backs it up. The oil is useless. And so OPEC had a little meeting this weekend, said, okay, let's cut back on production, right? Well, Russia, Saudi Arabia, well, first Russia said, nah, I'm not going to do it. And so they were going to sell as much oil, so they were going to make more money. So Saudi Arabia doubles down, says, well, we're going to, produce more, plus we're cutting our base price below what it is now. And that's why the market, it's one of the reasons why the market is heading for the basement. Now, if you do that, that's like shooting yourself in the head, meaning this hidden hand has other ulterior motives going on, right? Now, if you go watch this guy, Max Igon, on Crow House, he's in Australia. That guy, he's got a really interesting point of view. And so his point of view is that this virus is a scam, right? To basically bring everyone under a martial law. And everyone's going to be starting to pass virus Patriot Acts, where forget, they can come in your house. They don't need any kind of paperwork and just take you away, right? And whether, you're sniffling, the law that they're about to pass in Australia, you don't even have to have the virus. All they have to do is think you could be exposed, right? You're not coughing, you're not sneezing, you don't have a temperature. They give you a test and you don't have it, but they can still arrest you because you knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody who got sick, right? And so they take you away. So if they don't like you, they can use this too. And that's what China has been doing, taking because the biggest virus China was worrying about was the virus coming from Hong Kong called Freedom. They didn't want another Tiananmen Square in their capital. So the best way to stop that is to get people freaked out that they're going to die from the virus. They'll stop, they won't congregate. Oh, we can't congregate. So it's all coming at the same time. The economy's falling apart. The virus is going to kill everyone. And I would say that there is a virus, but it's manufactured. And it has very specific stipulations in that it is spreading like wildfire, meaning it was designed to do that. Most viruses don't spread as quickly as this. And this is spreading, spreading, spreading. Unless they, through the stuff that they spray in the sky is doing this, could be, who knows. Again, don't believe a word I say. This is just a story I'm telling you, right? This is like the grim fairy tales, and they're pretty grim. So that virus, what it's going to do is infect all of the world. And in the first year of it, it will kill, or something will kill, about 20% of the world's population. So instead of having, 7 point something billion people, we will go down to 6.9, right? But everyone will be infected. And by next year, this time, they will have not a shot that will keep you from getting it, but it'll be like AIDS. It'll like you'll have to take AZT for this, right? Antiviral, right? And you will have to pay. It'll be one little pill that you have to take every month, and that pill will cost $2,500, right? Now, Big Pharma has the patent on this little pill, even though the federal government spent all the money on researching it and developing it. Big Pharma is going to, Mr. Lilly or any of the people who were doing the OxyContin thing. So this little pill will make any other drug they've been having. You need to have this, and they will just think 6.9 billion times $2,500 times 12 months. That's a lot of cheddar. So instead of gold backing our currency, your face is going to back up. So there's not going to be any more paper money. It's all going to be electronic. Your face will be the money, right? And unless you go along with this 100%, you don't get that little pill. Not only that, all transportation, to save the environment, all vehicles will be electric, right? And you won't own a car. You will take your little guy here and hit an app, and it will basically send you a car. Well, if you're not doing what the new holy roller state wants, run by the Pope Mickey, then you won't get anything, right? And when you get to a point where you can't sustain, they will say you're sick, you're mentally ill, you're a threat to society. We're taking you to Gitmo. And I would say, unless people step up, they don't have to start a movement or get guns or any of the stuff those yahoos, no, sorry, no. All you have to do is be nice to your fellow man. When you see something going wrong, you say, wait a minute, no. I am not allowing this, your little mantra has to be, I will not stand for violence against my brothers and sisters and all my relations. I will not stand silently by while this happens. You will step up and you'll say something. You will go to them and help them. You will share whatever little you might have with everybody else, right? And that's the only way this is going to work. And if we start doing that now, instead of going humana, this is wringing your hands, humana, Oh, I really like Pinhead. Oh, I don't. I'm a. What do they call people who are? Not liberal. They're whatever. It starts with a P. I mean, they use all these words, and I can't use them anymore. Can't even say them. Progressive. That's the word. These folks aren't progressive. They're like Stalin. What we have to do is move forward, right? So, anyway, I might have to go in to read what you guys have been saying because, it's like black with gray and it's brighter out here and can hardly see anything, and so I may just walk in and sit down in the living room and continue this conversation. So, anyway. Here we go. Now, in my walking, I somehow disconnect myself. You know, I will come back because it's easy to do. I can push a little something and it'll go away. And, oh, I have no idea what I did, and my pants will fall down. I'm just a clown. I'm like one of those barrel clowns at the circus. Uh, ay, ay, ay. Oh, here we go. Oh, here's a family. Puppy dog, bananas, gloves, cats. Do, 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 do. Okay. Yeah, see, I can kind of see it now. Oh. Oh. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Do, do. Oh, boom, boom. Okay, let's see what you guys have been saying. Hey, Bob. It's Eden. This is my new account. Okay. I'd love to come. Well, it's almost time. It's getting. Little plants are coming out. It's getting warm. By April 1st, it'll be warm enough for you to camp outside. Culture has always been a gilded time of art and science. It's just at that time these big bankers decide to allow it. Yeah, but see, it's us who allow the bankers. Meaning we don't have to. The real change that has to occur right now is that we no longer go along, with the Church of the Golden Cow. Yep. Hey, buddy, bud. Yes. I know what that means. Let's see. Oops. There we go. The fact that it's so easy to look down lockdown a city, shows just how trapped we really are. Exactly. All we need to do is shut the roads. Yep. Because people are dumb and lazy. Yep. But their real essence isn't dumb and lazy. They are just, we're like cows. We've been domesticated. Greta destroys trees to make her book. Yep. And she says just how bad it is to cut down a tree. Exactly. She's, there's this website that shows everyone who's an actor, long to the gold. Greta is actually, she's an actress. They hired her to play that role. Pretty much everyone is, unless you're outside that loop, I say it's nature has something to get off of her chest, then let her down against her. See, the thing about nature is that she doesn't care. Nature doesn't care. We have to save the earth. Forget it. The earth will get along very nicely. Who we have to save is ourselves. And that's what this whole, we don't live in a linear world. The Big Bang, that's all there was, the Alpha and the Omega. We're just experiencing it as a linear ride. It's not like the universe is expanding. No, sorry, not happening. When we just have unlimited amounts of make-believe time to experience our soul's free will to ascend into love's co-creation. However long it'll take, how much misery we have to have, it's all up to us. We're manufacturing this, not nature or God or none of the above. Everything we do on earth has repercussions, good or bad, good, yep. And repercussions like pretty much just on ourselves, meaning because the world is an illusion and the dynamics of, the nature is an entity to itself. There's Father Sky and Mother Earth, right? So that's nature, and it's the yin yang part of it. There's Father Sky and Mother Earth. Right? Father Sky has the prana, the life force, and it has to be grounded through the chi of Mother Earth, right? And if you are in that loop, you got no problems. It's the feed for crows and becomes feed for us. So crows, silent green. Yep, silent green is people. Oh hell. Even your emojis, buddy, are like held in review. I have no idea what the heck that means. Banana, triangle with smile, spoon, laughing, almost crying, sun, oil droplet, and a poodle. Can only guess. Yep. So we all going to be envious of you living in. Well, come and join, Jane. Yeah. The invitation's open. I got a nice 3 acres. I got, I've laid it out. So there is like a good 20 campsites, and there's a big area cleared out. I was going to build a house. We could build at least 10 or 15 tiny houses or yurts or whatever, right? And why I picked this place is that the county is so poor, it has no building codes. So no one can tell you can't do that, right? See, whereabouts are you, Bob? Okay. I'm in the squirreliest section of the Northeast. I'm right at this really interesting little point where West Virginia comes together with Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, and North Carolina. This is, all the states are kind of right on top of each other. And so I'm like 20 miles to North Carolina. I'm like 30 miles to Virginia. I'm like 50 miles to West Virginia, maybe 100 miles to Kentucky. And all of their mountain ranges, there's the Appalachian and there's the Blue Ridge. And I'm right at this core center of where they kind of cross each other. And so it is like the belly button of the geomancy of this, North America, right? So energetically, it's quite amazing. And so I'm about a little less than 40 miles from Boone, North Carolina. I'm a little bit less than 50 miles from Johnson City, right? I'm a little bit less than 60 miles from a place called Kingsport, right? And I'm about, like I said, less around 50, 60 miles to the border of West Virginia. So I'm in the middle. I'm in no man's land. I mean, there are no, those are the closest towns. There are no cities, no towns, no nothing near me, right? Except little hollers where people have lived for the last, 200 years, right? And they're all dying off because they all did pretty well when they had their little farms and sold their vegetables to Birdseye and people like that. But that stopped happening in 71, right? And the stuff that's grown isn't grown, but all the little farms were bought out by Bayer Chemical. And then Bayer bought out Monsanto, and Monsanto runs it through a company called Maymead. So there are all these, it's just like the CIA. They have all these cutouts, all these, you can't tell who's who, right? Unless you read the Wall Street Journal, then you kind of know. I mean, all this stuff is right in front of us. Okay, so how you get in touch with me? I have a Gmail account, which I respond to very nicely, and that is thedudeawake42@gmail. you send me a little, hey, here's me, then I can return. I'm not very good. If you were to like send me your email address, I have not, as of this date, been able to figure out how to start a Gmail. Now I can respond because there's a little box says respond. I just hit that and bingo, I can respond. So the dude awake 42 at Gmail, right? That's what I got to do. And what else? Go read my writings at xratted.blogspot.com. And that'll give you, those are all stories. Again, I'm a griot, I tell stories. And it's like the good book, kind of based on what kind of happened. The real story about kind of what happened, right? So all of my stories are the real story about kind of what happened, right? And I'm still writing and writing. I'm just, until people start reading that, why should I put any more up on my blog spot, my Griot Publishing? So I got about 7 novels. Unless you read them, I'm not going to put any more. Um, it takes a little effort to do that. So I got 7 up there. So I'd love, like here, I'd love if you guys were to start leaving comments on these shows. I mean, I take the trouble to come to you guys. It'd be nice if, because, so it says there's 4 people watching, but when I end, it'll tell me like 26 actually watched, and the 4 to 8 were the people on the live chat, right? Then when every month they send me a thing of my, how many people watch for how long, da da da. So I have about close to 70,000 people watching this, right, at their own leisure, right? And they get a hold of me at the dude awake 42 at Gmail, and they said, I stopped watching TV and I don't look at the YouTube anymore. I just leave your shows playing on repeat, and it just goes down the line. And they said it's like wallpaper. It's great. It's better than listening to the radio. So a lot of people do that. And then they do get a hold of me at Gmail and ask me questions. And so and I respond as well as I can. And the other interesting thing is, so people get a hold of me at Gmail, and then we start talking, and I get them to tell me about them, and they start talking about what's bothering them, and then I give them some advice on how maybe, hey, why don't you try this? And then they don't, they say, oh, I tried it, was really great. Oh, I tried meditating. Well, I actually can. And they'll do that for a bit, and then at some point they say, oh, this is too weird. It's too hard. I can't do it. I don't want to talk to you anymore. You really are great. You really helped me out a lot. But okay. They get scared because they realize, being a griot, but the stories I tell you makes you see that it's your responsibility to run your life, not the government or the church. You know what FUCK means? Fornicating under church and king. So, and that's why the term Mary Shelley's mother, who was part of the French Paris Commune, started the term free love, because she didn't want the church or the king to tell her who she should. Not the fact that she wanted to screw everybody. No, she had one husband, but she didn't want the church or the king involved. Just like my second wife, she didn't. We were married. We spent every night together for 8 years, and then she died, but she didn't want to get married. She did that once, and it didn't turn out right. So she didn't, she loved the relationship we had, and we were we were more married than most married people. She hated kids. She fixed herself. She didn't want to have kids. And so that's kind of how it rolled. A new Back to Eden account. Well, as long as you just come visit me and then go visit the dude awake at 42 at Gmail, it doesn't matter what your account is called. I kind of respond. Just, when you send me an email, no matter what the name is, say, hi, this is Eden, and then send me something and I'll respond. That's how it works. So here we are at a very, this is one of those little times that'll go down, like when, Rome burned, when the Holy Roman Empire, when the Visigoths attacked, when, and there have been our history, no one's told us our history, because so much stuff has happened between 1600 and now. I mean, really crazy shit. We had a gigantic flood. What wiped most of the Indians out was a thing called the mud flood. Go Google that one, the mud flood. It happened in the 1840s, right? And there was a crew that came from Germany, went to California, and dug up some exotic materials and made flying saucers in the 1840s. It was called the Sonora Airship Club, right? And it was the guys who became the Nazis. Um, the Thule Society. They had a lot of money. They came over here. Because not many people were in California. It was sunny. It was nice, and where Lockheed Aerospace is in Palo Mundo, that's those guys, right? That's the Skunk Works, right? And so it's very, and none of this stuff is very well hidden. I mean, you can stumble across this, but most people are so distracted by seeing how many likes they have. That's why I don't care. Yeah, I like it when I see you guys give me thumbs up. That's nice, but there's so few. The corporate world is keeping me away from the majority of the folks, right? And like I said, there's 50 something thousand, 70,000 people watching it, but only 300 and something, 370 subscribers. Only about 26 of you are part of the chorus, meaning who come on and chat, right? So, so we're living, and I been doing this series called The Window of Opportunity, right? And so here we are, window of opportunity, and it's all good. And I'm doing this because I was blessed to have 10 years of uber hedonism. So I was living like a billionaire. Most of the times I lived like a millionaire. Most of my life I lived like a millionaire. But those 10 years I was working for the corporate desperate lawyer. So I was living like one of those billionaires, but I wasn't, right? I worked 11 weeks a year, made a lot of money, and went off and, lived in the Caribbean or lived down in the Keys or, went here or went there and had the Uber, in my little travels of working for the desperate lawyers, I would meet people and then I would hang with them. Like, I did a gig in West Palm Beach, and that was close enough to Stewart. I was hanging at this I met this lawyer, and he had his office in Stewart, and he bought a house right downtown, and he used about a third of it for his office. He and his wife, he was a corporate lawyer, and she was a lawyer for poor people who needed a lawyer. And so they, his corporate work subsidized her being a lawyer for the poor and needy and the people who were being thrown out of the country, illegal aliens. And so, but the other 3/4, they turned into a coffee house nightclub. It's called the Green Door or the Blue Door, some color door. And it was right at the fall of '08, and where all these kids who went off to prestigious colleges, they couldn't get a job, so they were living in their parents' or their grandparents' basement, and they all hung out at this place, and they had really good Wi-Fi, so there were a ton of kids writing apps and doing things like that, thinking of great ideas, and they're probably already millionaires right now, right? And so I kind of was living in Jensen. Well, my parents had a house not too far from there, and they had died, and my sisters wanted to sell it, so I was cleaning the house up and living in it, and enjoying that, because that was a very rich people gated community, golf course, all that stuff, and your monthly payment went for $400 worth of food. So I, we were being charged for it, whether I ate it or not. So I would go in and have lobster and big shrimp and roast beef and chocolate cake. And then I would go stay in some rich guy's place, in Palm Springs or, I had 10 years of living like that. And I gained 250 pounds. And then I died in a plate of spaghetti, And as they were rolling me in to have a quadruple bypass, and they were going to cut my legs off because they were turning gangrene, I said, no, I didn't sign anything. You can't do this to me. I'll sue your ass off, So they rolled me back in the ICU. I told the rich guy who wanted, he signed for it because
he wanted me to finish what I was doing for him. I said, hey, they're going to kill me. So you just do, well, I need a colonic, I need this, I need that. So he put me up in his house from West Palm Beach. Took me about a week to a point where I could get in a wheelchair and go into the office and finish up that job for him. Well, in those 10 years, I probably worked for 60 different lawyers, right? And I would always be given, a legal aid or a lawyer, to help me get ready to negotiate the contract, right? And usually they were the smartest, greatest, most interesting people, because they were the only ones who could, what, you're going to give me to this homeless guy with 2 dogs and I got to do what he says? Well, most lawyers could not stomach that, except for really interesting lawyers who had great confidence in their abilities, right? And who also kind of was interested by me, and they, saw me as, a sensei, right? I agree on. And then at night we would go and have a great old time on, the lawyer company's expense account. You know, so I did that for 10 years, and out of that I had. You ever seen the movie or read the book, An Affair to Remember? Well, I had about 6 women in my life in those 10 years, and it mostly were lawyers who were really great lawyers, and they were so beautiful and so smart that they couldn't get a boyfriend because most boyfriends were, scared of them. And me, not scared of anything. And a few other, I had a girlfriend who was a TV anchor woman. I met her at that, and she was a great writer. And that's why she, at a young age, she was a producer and then became, you know, she ran a section of the news, and then she was the anchor person at the nightly news. So, and NBC was, pruning her to be, the next Lester Holt, and about now. Um, and so I had about 6 girls, and this lady who owned a big art gallery in West Palm Beach, and she liked my artist sensibility, meaning I knew what art was worth, and I was running a nonprofit art collective called Mo something, Moho, but it was in um, Port St. Lucie. And at that time, I was living with a reggae group, and it was like a little town. There was like 6 reggae families, and it was like the Partridge Family, but reggae. And I was their manager, and we were at this club, and I met this old Jewish guy who I said, "Don't I know you? Didn't you have something to do? Weren't you, in the '60s? Weren't you part of, one of those bands like, you know, something just a few notches below Crosby, Stills, and Nash? Um, and he, oh yeah, I know." And so he was a promoter, and he was doing what? And I said, "So how would you like to be the promoter of these guys?" I said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." So this old Jewish guy, me, and the reggae guys, we did a whole winter of playing, and what we ended up was we used to play at really crappy bars along, US 1 near Marathon and Hollywood, and it was like in the Blues Brothers, they had the cage and people would throw beer bottles at us, but this old guy knew all these people in West Palm Beach, and so we started playing at their private clubs, and they would give us 15 grand a show instead of like $300. So we were doing pretty good, and we lived collectively, right, in these 3 houses that were on this one block, and they faced inward to each other. They had a nice little courtyard, and if we weren't doing a gig Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night, we would go into Port St. Lucie, which was like going into hell. And I had this little hibachi, and I would fill up one of these guys a pickup truck with palm fronds, which are like gasoline. They put a match to them, they light right up, and I would break them up and put them in the hibachi and have the eternal flame. So we'd have a fire right on the street on the main drag of Port St. Lucie. And the cops, because Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, cops weren't down there because everybody was out there. It was like being in Beirut, and so we would play reggae music, and the family would cook up a whole bunch of food, Jamaican, jerk chicken and jerk pork and fish and veggies, and serve it up to the audience, right? And everything was donation. We never, so that'll be $7. It's like whatever you can throw in the bucket, right? And the whole town, by the third week we started doing this, the whole town would come. And instead of shooting each other, they'd be dancing away, and they'd bring their own jungle juice and whatever. And the cops would stay away, and they would put up little barricades at one end of the main drag and the other, because no white people came down. This wasn't like a thoroughfare. It was the main drag of Port St. Lucie in the poor people section, not the rich people section. It's like on the other side of the tracks. And so that road, from the railroad tracks, US 1 to, I guess, west, went for about 6 miles where it hit another big road. So if you put things here, in that 6 mile stretch of the poor people downtown, no white people, no business, no one cared, so the cops would do it. Second week we said, hey, we're going to do this. And they saw a precipitous drop. I mean, every weekend they had 3 or 4 murders and, a bunch of shootouts. And, and if things got really carried away, all it had to do was go over the railroad tracks, go over US 1 into the rich people part of Port St. Lucie. And then it got messy. So we were doing this and it stopped that. And so, for a whole winter, for like 4 months, we would have really great gigs, and mostly in the afternoons, like Saturday and Sunday afternoon, and we would come back before the sun would set and set up our little hibachi and table with food, and we would make, by the third week, we were making roughly about $1,000 a night, of donations. And we just had buckets out there, and I would put on a funny hat and just shake the bucket, once the party got going, and dance around and have a good time. And so at that, I had a couple of interesting black prince goddesses, that were like, and they happily shared me, because they couldn't stand me. They didn't want to marry me or have me live with them or any of the above, but to go out dancing or go to a club with us or have that kind of fun night. And I had a very nice, shack, amongst these houses. I had a very nice shack, very nicely appointed. Everything off the street, all the furniture, I got everything straight off. He said, because this guy's big truck, we would, on furniture day, we would cruise at 6 a.m. into the rich people neighborhood, and they'd leave out beds and refrigerators and TVs and you name it, they left it, And these guys had no concept of, I said, you got this big truck? Okay. We get up at 6, we drive around, and there was a nuclear, this is rich people. So they lived right on the beach, right? And they had these condos. But to the south of them was a nuclear power plant, only 3 miles away. Couldn't see it, but it was right. You could feel it, right? And to the north of it was a gigantic septic system that all of the pig farms, 8 million pigs crapping into this estuary, and the water would go, and before it went into the ocean, it would go through this, that would take out the big chunks, right? And pretty much the other septic systems from, downtown Port St. Lucie and a few other municipalities in that county. And so, global warming does not happen from carbon. What the biggest thing causing global warming, which you do not hear on the news, you do not hear on the media, no one talks about it, it is farm animals, industrial meat, cows and pigs and chickens. They create so much methane, and methane is way more of and that's what's causing the undocumentable rate of global warming. And what's going to happen once it heats up the permafrost up there in the north, in Canada and Alaska and all the way around and both things, once that melts, there's going to be a methane belch were like 20 million years ago, and they've been frozen, and they're just percolating down there, and they belch. And this has happened before. We've had many species extinctions, meaning wipe out of all life on Earth, and that's happened on this planet many times. Not just that big asteroid, but a number of other asteroids. Not just that big one that hit down in the Gulf that took out the dinosaurs, but we've been around, you know, about really we've been here about 6 billion years. People say, oh, it's only a few 100 million. Anyway, we've been here a long time. So there have been lots of different empires, species, you name it. But the souls, the bodies change, but the souls stay the same. So once all of that cow, pig, and chicken methane warms the earth up enough to melt the permafrost, there's going to be a belt of methane that will be will wipe everyone. And, meaning because they see these unbelievable warming and coolings, and they happen like that. Meaning not over 100,000 years or a million years or 100 years, but it kind of gets to this point, and then saying everyone dies like immediately. And same with this little novel CV-19. Why it's novel is that they've never seen anything like it before, because it's got on one side AIDS. And what did AIDS do? It infected you and you didn't know you had it for 8 years. Then you got it, destroyed your immune system, and you died. Took you about a year or 2 or 5 years in a miserable kind of way, right? Well, so that's one end of the book ends, AIDS. The other end is the Ebola, because they don't want you. They want you, once you get that sick, they want you to die like Ebola kills you, which is pretty quick. And then it kind of makes you really, if you get even close to people, that's when it really passes it on. And then in between is the crazy little bat viruses that are like, the flu. And so there it is. And it's man-made because they can see where the CRISPR would slice the RNA up and people slid this shit in there. So it's pretty much so if by mid-April, everyone gets infected and then it kind of goes down and goes away, well, then it's, just a kind of a flu, kind of like SARS, kind of like, that we've had a few other, the bird flu, the swine flu, the what's the other lung thing that came from you know Italy or whatever. Anyway, so but if in around April it kind of plateaus a little bit and dips just a little bit and then goes like this and shoots way up more than the other one, then it's been a weaponized biological, genetically modified organism that's gonna basically infect the whole, you know, all of humans, kill about 20% of them right off the bat, and then keep killing that level of percentage every year. So, within 20 years, they will get the population down to a billion or two, right? Which is kind of where the hidden hand wants it. Our present population is too many people. They can't. If they were all stupid, it'd be one thing, but they all have access to information, and it's a handle to manipulate all of this, right? So that's what we are. This window of opportunity is, that's what these guys are trying to do right now, between the economics, between the biologics, and then there's a war, meaning, we have like 10 wars going on, hundreds of thousands of people being displaced, going all over the place. People in Europe are becoming totally nationalistic and racist, and there are about 20 million people who have no place to live. I mean, it's the worst, you know, time of people not having a place to live since World War II, and you know, that's where we're at. And but the wars are still going on. I mean, they haven't come to an end. What's going on in Libya, what's going on in Iraq, what's going on in Afghanistan, what's going on in Nigeria, what's going on in other parts of the Mid East, Egypt, Israel, um, if Pakistan and India, they're always like on the edge of committing war, and now this President Modi, who's like talk about nationalistic. So if the Indians were to, let's say, start throwing nuclear weapons at each other, just if each detonated 20 nuclear weapons, so 40 nuclear weapons altogether, right? They just did that, just between India, and whacked each of their major cities, killed about, 20 to 40 million people. Those nuclear weapons would hoist enough dirt, radioactive dirt, into the upper atmosphere that would make a nuclear winter, right? And so we wouldn't have enough sun, we wouldn't be able to grow food, and then between this virus and the economic collapse and the nuclear winter, you're talking about what Agenda 21 is. Having 500 million people on this earth. Now they've already since 1930, the Nazis have been out in space, right? And they went to the moon, in the 30s. They went to Mars in the 40s. And they have been a breakaway civilization. And that's why, you've had these economic disruptions, since when did England go into the Suez Canal? 54? Well, since 54, trillions of dollars have been exported off this planet, the gold mostly, um, to pay for exploration of our solar system and beyond. And most things that people see are ours. Now there's ETs here and there's dimensionals here, and it's just like in the movies of Men in Black. It's like a bus station. So all of this stuff is coming right in our face, right? In the next 10 months, this is all going to break out, and we will have, and not to hit the streets and not to do what's that girl, the Swedish little girl whose book cuts down trees. Um, anyway, not to do that, but to be nice to each other. If we all were that pebble in the pond, you know, that's all it takes. That's it. If we serve love's co-creation, the illusion of materialism will disappear, pretty much, because it's just an illusion. Anyway, yep. I was I was driving into Denver when the WTO, World Trade Organization, having their big meeting there, and I got stuck in a traffic jam, and I tried to get out of it, and I took the wrong turn. I ended up on, and they had just opened that Denver airport that looks, they spent $20 zillion, took them 20 years, and all it is a bunch of tents, right? And I was like out on the runway, and this car came and drove in front of me, and it had a big sign on the back saying, "Follow me." And I followed him, and we went underground and underground and underground and underground about 4 miles, and ended out in this gigantic chasm where there was like never ending apartment buildings. It looked like a city underground. And, they had a hologram, there were no shadows. And they had, and you could see this thing go to the curve of the earth. I mean, it went on forever, and it was a city down there, right? And then these guys with guns said, "What are you doing here?" So and it was a car in front of me and said, "Follow me." And I said, "I'm just following him." And so they kind of looked at me and looked at him, went over to him, and they said, "Okay, sir, follow him. He's going to take you out." So I followed him, and we went around and about and up and down, and we ended coming out in Boulder, which is kind of where I wanted to go. But we did it all underground. And that was in 1991 or 93, early 90s. So that would explain fresh vegetation and woolly mammoth's mouth. Yep, exactly. So anyway, it's good to see you again. Make some comments down there. Tell more people. Let's get some more of a cadre, more pebbles in the pond, because it's going to need a lot more people than just the 375 being nice to each other. And everyone needs to kind of, that's the one practice. Forget, you guys don't want to go into state, don't want to meditate. it would behoove you to do that. And all you got to do, I did 2 shows a couple days ago. It says how to meditate. So if you want to meditate, just watch that and follow that pretty much straight up. And it's becoming spring, so anyone who and you can't be a drainbow. You can't just come and hang out. Meaning, if you come to the deep green, you got to bring your own speciality. Bring your best self with you. Bring a little money, a little green energy. Bring some tools of whatever you do. And so I have the rough palette. Like I said, I have about 20 nice campsites. So, and I have a garden spot. I had my garden there, but I can't do it anymore. Barely can walk. But if there were some younger folks who wanted to really get into gardening, that's enough to grow enough for everybody, right? And then there's 2 college towns, within 40 miles either way. And we can go there and play with those people, right? They have great resources, and we can start the traveling video art circus. We go there, excite those kids, get them to throw in some money, some real money. We put together a really good website and advertise for college. So this fall that's coming, in August, we can get some people, some colleges to hire us to come put on a show. They would pay easily 15 grand a week. So if we had 5, 10, 15 people, it's like $1,000 to $2,000 a person a week, and we'd be having fun. So that's the plan, right? Yep. Sharing Ma Jones. Yep. I've always done electric work. That's one of my skill sets. But I've always been a healer. I've always been a negotiator. I've always been a photographer, a filmmaker, theatric, lighting designer, whatever people need of my skill sets. And I was trying to explain to this young man yesterday that you can be a master in all of those because it takes just integrity to be a master. Meaning if you want to master something, you do the best you can. You don't need a certificate. All you need to do, and you have integrity and you have self-confidence. I mean, I've never had to, really, people always needed me more than I needed them. Right. And I didn't have a website, you know. Yeah, I've had a few, I got a few degrees, but I never showed them. I have a master's electrician's license in New York. And basically, and I have a MSW, which allows you to be a shrink. But all the things I did, I had, street cred. Oh yeah, he's a great electrician. Oh yeah, man, he put on this show. Oh, and plus I took photographs and videos of everything. You want to see this? Here, watch this. That's what I did. I'm thumbing through a few pictures, and I've showed a few of my photo books on this channel to give you an idea of the things I did. And every town I go into, I kind of do that, right? Now I'm kind of limited physically, but not really. But I've been here, for 20 years. I've been involved in everything that ever went on in the last 20 years. I've been part of it. So yeah, I have street credit in all the places I hang out in. So we can take that, that's what makes you a shaman. That's what makes you a griot. That's what makes you sensei. Street cred. So manipulated. Which boot just manipulated my world. Manipulated. Please. I have to go back up a little bit, see what you guys have been saying. Yeah, you guys, you get into jags of writing. Uh, Stop it. domestic here. Busted out with laughter. So, yes, I'll have to take a look at that. I mean, I feel sorry for that poor girl because she's being used, but she's being self-abused because, like I said, she's an actress, so she's getting paid. You know, and I keep saying to AI, come on, if you hire that chick, you should definitely hire us. We'd help you out. We'd give you opportunity. The desperate hidden hand, and that is all it is really desperate. Those clowns have no idea what's going on, and they think they do. So get in touch with me at the dude awake 42 at Gmail. I told you the closest towns: Johnson City, Tennessee. Um, you know, Boone, North Carolina, Kingsport, and Bristol. Right? All those are within 50 miles of me. Suspended players. Dude awake 42. Yep, that's it at Gmail. Nope, I'm not born in 42. I was born in 1950. I'm a 50s baby. Grew up in the 50s. Then I was a teenager in the 60s, right? And then I was a young adult in the 70s. In the 80s, I was a 30-year-old. Yeah. Then your airport, I would explain fresh vegetation and cow's mouth. That's when you were, like I said, I always do electric work. I always have my tools in my car. I just can't do it as a business. I can't go up on ladders. I can't, the last gig I did, I helped some people wire a farm, right? That was about a year ago. And, I drove there and they had a bunch of young people with ladders. I said, all I need is young people, ladders, hammers, sledgehammers, and drills. I got everything else, right? And I gave them a list of things to go to Lowe's to buy. And so, I had all the stuff there. They had about 4 guys and gals with ladders who wanted to learn to be electricians. And there was a active drop there with a meter on it. And it had a like circuit breaker box like from the 50s, but it was 3-phase. So it's 200 amp 3-phase. That's all the juice you needed for a milking farm. And it had been wired, but it been wired in the 50s. And, everything had rusted, broken, terrible. So, we took it all apart, saved the stuff we could, put in new sub panels and lighting and outlets and grounded everything and put GFIs on everything. And they did all, they drilled all the things, pulled all, I said, okay, do this, do this, do this, do that. And then I did what I do best, and that's terminate, put the stuff in the panels. And I showed them how to do the switches and the outlets. And they did that and the light fixtures. And then we brought in milking machines that they had bought them, used and that were kind of broke. And we took them apart and cleaned them and fixed them and installed them and energized them. And what worked and what didn't, we fixed. And, and that took me all of 6 days. And it cost them all of $800 in materials, right? And the one electrician who said he would do it, he said, you'll have to wait until 3 months from now, and it'll cost you $25,000. Well, it basically cost them $800. And then they gave me a nice little gratuity, right? And I'm now their friend. And I'll have cheese until it comes out my ears. So I still always do electric work, because I can't, I'll go into, and the job I did before that was about 4 or 5 months in last July. One of the old folks who live in their hovel, their house, it's like wired in the 20s. Anyway, they had electric fire, and luckily their house didn't burn down. The fuse blew. So I came in there, rewired everything for him. so they wouldn't get electrocuted or burn their house down. Because they were going to just stick pennies in the screw. I said, no, we're going to take this out, put a circuit breaker, new circuit breaker, because the drop was there, the meter was there. I just put a circuit breaker panel in and ran some new home runs, right? And had their kids and them do it. So that's what level of look. I can terminate all day, but I can't get up on ladders, can't drill holes, can't do that kind of stuff, pull wire. They can. And so I have the knowledge. You only need to be a monkey to drill a hole. Well, basically, what electricity is known as electromagnetic force, right? There's amperage, voltage, and ohms, right? Voltage is the force, like water pressure, right? Amperage is basically the potential, what it can do, right? Before you turn on the spigot. And watts is the work being done. 100-watt light bulb, that's the work. It's making 100 watts that mathematically can turn the watts into lumens, which is the measurement of light. Yeah. So it's a simple, voltage equals, uh, watts divided into amperage, and if you take the volts, multiply it by the amps, you get the watts, right? And so it's a pretty simple mathematical thing. So if you have high voltage, and 110 voltage, anything over 60 volts will give you a jolt. Have you ever touched a cow fence, electric fence? Well, that's like 12,000 volts, high voltage, no amperage. So there's no current to like electrocute you. It's the potential, right? So yeah, you'll get a woo and you let go, right? But if there was a lot of amps there, like a high voltage line, that would burn you. You know, that would like carbonate you. That would like turn you into a lamb chop. So your body is pretty much water, blood, right? And the your blood is made up of iron, so that's a conductor, right? So that blood is going through your heart, right? And it has this electric rhythm, this electric current kind of does this to your heart. So you get shocked, it sets the heart out of rhythm. Heart doesn't pump blood, you die. The other thing it does, your brain has all this wild electric circuitry, but it uses like the current it takes to start your heart up is a lot, 300 volts, at 700 joules, which is a lot of current. It's like bang. So it's like getting hit by a sledgehammer. Well, your brain, when the EEG, that's electro software, it's little teeny bits of electricity. So you whack your brain. That's like when they electrocute you, they put this little hat on your head and put a wire there so it goes from your head out your feet. So it basically fries your brain. So and your brain is just like jello. You put enough current through that, it will boil it. So that's how electricity kills you. But mostly people get shocks and they get thrown. And it's the throw that really hurts them. You're on a ladder, you touch the wrong wire, bam, you get thrown off the ladder, you're 12 feet up in the air, and you land on a pile of cinder blocks. That's usually what gets you. So does that answer your question about electricity and how it kills you? And the electric universe. Yeah. Very much. I've kind of experienced it, so that will, if you see something, you feel something, you experience something. I mean, and that's what life's about, experiencing things. So yeah, the universe is an electric. It's that image of the Matrix and the code is flowing down the screen. That's a good visual of what's going on in the universe, right? That movie was pretty right on. A lot of those movies are very right on. It's kind of really, like I said, the Men in Black movie is really exactly what's going on when it comes to extraterrestrial and extra dimensional folk, right? So yeah, electric universe. And you can, that's so when you meditate, when you do Sufi meditation, you're manipulating the electric universe. You know. So when those guys, the Sufis, put swords through their cheeks and out the other end, and then they pull it out, and this heals like within minutes, not even a scar. They're manipulating the electric universe. And when I was at Duke University in '69, and I worked for the Seal Corporation, and they were a company, a cutout, a private entity, not a government thing, but they were working for DARPA. And what their whole reason for existence was, they were doing the Captain American thing. They were making super soldiers, and they had all these Nazis there, and the Nazis had been doing it since the camps. That's what Mengele was. That's what they were trying to do, making super soldiers. So, the guy who did the Marvel Stan Lee, that guy really knew what was going on. All those comics are exactly what's going on. The mutants, you know, Captain America, Hail Hydra, Shield. That's pretty much it. Right? The names might be a little different, but it's exactly what's going on. So I'm getting a little hungry. It's an hour and 31 minutes. I've gotten this thing to work at my friend's house, so maybe I'll do another little live chat in the evening if I feel up for it. So I'm sleeping on a couch. It's not as comfy as the bed I was sleeping on at my other friend's house. And this is the part your butt sits on. So the part I'm sleeping on is all of like maybe 25 inches wide. So can't roll one. Last night I roll around a lot. So I rolled out and went thump on the floor. And when I kind of was trying to grab, my friend's dog was like sleeping next to me because she likes me. So, I fell out of bed and I missed the dog this morning. All the dog did was like turn its little head and look at me. But it was darker than dark. I didn't know he was there. So I put my hand down to try to get up. And I put my hand on its head. And it was like started licking my arm like, hey, get your hand off. Choice between licking my arm or biting it. And, nice dog. And she's not a small dog. She's a pretty big dog. If she wanted to get, nasty, she could. But she's known me since she's a wee thing, and I'm her Uncle Al, her Uncle Sensei. So, anyway, so that's it for now. It was a nice chat. Good to see you all. And remember, get a hold of me, the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. Go look at my stuff at xratte.blogspot.com and make some comments there and some comments here and see what we can do. When you back, let's see. It's about 4 o'clock. Won't do it.